Hello Lokesh, hello Sagar.
Hi.
We will wait for Teeth and we'll get started. Yeah, I think Teeth is also here. In fact, he's sitting in front of some sort of a streaming system. Okay, perfect, guys. It's an honor to have such a esteemed panel. I think we have one from the community side of it, one who's a pro gamer. We of course have Lokesh, whom we just heard a minute ago. So over to you, Lokesh. Maybe you can take on the proceedings from here.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Ravi. Hello, everybody. Once again, good evening to all of you guys who are present, and it's a wonderful panel. We got Tirth Mehta. I don't know if many of you know him, but we have actually an honor to have him here. He is India's first medal winner. He won a bronze medal for us in Asian Games 2018. It was a very heartening moment and this was a very heartening moment for me personally because, the moment I came to know that he won, bronze, I literally had tears in my eyes, right?
Yeah.
And Tirth, I really appreciate it. You really made all of India proud for this. What you achieved was fabulous, commendable, and of course you have written history. Nobody
Yeah.
can take away that thing. You're the India's first esports athlete to win a medal for the country. Hats off to you, Deep. Really appreciate and thank you for coming on board. And then we have Sagar. Sagar is the founder or co-founder for QLAN. I would request Tirth and Sagar to quickly, introduce yourself, maybe a minute, because of course we got a lot of exciting questions to ask. And normally I don't moderate. So this is I think second or the third panel which I'm moderating. I hope I'll be able to do justice to this panel. Please, thank you. Over to you, Tirth. Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you, Lokesh sir, for introducing me in such a warm welcome giving. But yeah, I mean, I've been playing Hearthstone since 2014. I came in to know about esports around like 2010, and I used to play Dota before that, but since 2014, I've been playing Hearthstone, and I've competed in many international tournaments, and Asian Games being one of my most prestigious accomplishments by obtaining bronze. And I'm sure that our Indian Hearthstone community are going to bring gold in the upcoming year. So yeah, hopefully looking forward to that.
Hi guys, I'm Sagar. Firstly, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be in this panel with Lokesh and Tirth, obviously. So I'm one of the co-founders of Clan. It's a social networking platform for gamers. We're soon to launch next week, in fact. And understanding the community and the idea with the platform is to bring together each stakeholder and sort of drive value from there. So that's a little about me.
Right. Thank you, Deep. Thank you, Sagar. So moving on to our very first question, which I have for you guys is that what are the reasons that have popularized the esports in such a short span of time?
Tirth, would you want to go
Yeah,
first?
sure. So mostly like from what I have observed, like as a player, is that esports was like popular enough, at least for like the players, right? Like we knew about esports from a very long time. As I mentioned, I came to know about it back in 2010. So I knew about its existence, but again, it has been gaining that mainstream popularity just recently. I think like one of the main reason behind that is the introduction of the like the widespread essentially of the mobile esports titles that are available now. Like even like before PUBG Mobile, if I say like titles like Clash of Clans or even Clash Royale, and there's like many other titles from on mobile that basically started making esports widespread. And after like I think PUBG Mobile came in, and I think that's when the mobile esports as an industry just took off. And along with that, I mean, when I talk about PC esports or console esports, they have been in their own circle. They are still like quite popular when I like at least look at them from a player's perspective. But again, they are not like as generally mass appealing. So because of that, the mainstream more or less does not know about most of these esports titles. But yeah, like I think recently the main reason behind the popularity or like the growing popularity of esports in India is the widespread appeal of the mobile titles that are recently published.
Sure. And Sagar?
Uh, yeah, I mean, to take a few things from what Tirth mentioned, definitely what I feel popularized the entire esports scene is the availability of data. I mean, the mobile titles booming, going hand in hand with how accessible, how affordable data has become in the country, were two one of the tent poles of why gaming and esports took off in the way that we see it today. And secondly, I mean, we don't need to really discuss how popular mobile esports is. All of us here know exactly how large it's become. But the overall awareness within the community is also high. Now, be it content that they consume online, be it global gamers that they follow, that access is also sort of given a nudge or upthrusted the entire console and PC bit. Now, titles like Valorant, Apex Legends are things that gamers are actively picking up. So I think the overall awareness, the accessibility of data, and just getting awesome titles back to back is sort of what's taking us mainstream.
No, absolutely. I think what you said is absolutely correct. Though on the one side, while we have the esports titles which are available on mobile, plus the smartphone penetration, and of course the cheap internet. So moving on to our next question, esports athletes are definitely the core for esports. How do you see the future of how as an esports athlete you see the future of esports? What more can be done to enable you guys or enable them? Because this question is parallel to Teeth and to Sagar, to you
Correct.
both. So so what more can be done to enable you and them to win more medals and build sustainable careers, and similarly, what more should our esports athletes do to contribute in this growth? Maybe Teerth, starting from
Right.
you can
Yeah.
start there.
Yeah. I'll start that. So the future of esports, right? When I look at it, it's looking bright. The funny thing is that like when I joined esports, I basically when I started taking part into small esports tournaments and things like that, it was just exciting to me, and I was very interested in like just competing. But now when we look at the esports, it's there's like a lot of even financial support being introduced into the ecosystem now. So and even then, like I would when I look at the India's ecosystem or the India's state of esports right now, it's still in the starting steps, I would say, compared to the global scene that we have seen. Like so I would say like it is constantly on the rise, and there is still a huge scope that we can expand and essentially reach to our capabilities. So that is one thing. I still think that the future is still bright, and we have just started essentially. Another thing is that I've noticed, like that you mentioned that what more we can do, like what more can esports organizations can do, what more esports players can do. So when it comes to organizers, I would say like the main thing that I have noticed lacking is the support for lesser known titles. Like I mean, it is very easy, I would say, or like very convenient for organizers to support titles that are supported by the publishers themselves. Very easy to, like, for example, host tournaments and everything around it. But when it comes to like lesser known titles, for example, we can consider Hearthstone to be one of that. And like when it consider that there is not many tournaments happening in the Indian scene. So like basically there is no centralization of community. It's all based on when we find similar minded players online on different forums or anything. So all of those are like lacking in lesser known titles. So that is like one major thing that I hope would be solved. Like just having Indian tournaments, like just a large scale Indian tournament would help gather the community and spark another interest or competitiveness in the players that are even playing right now. So that's one thing that I think organizers can do. And when it comes to players, I mean, it's just general things like just being active in all the events that they can, and not just about playing, but also like helping to promote the event, and doing their best to essentially make the event the best it can be, not just as a player, but like maybe by volunteering when it's required and everything. So like that way can be improved. And like as a esports player, I would say like the most important thing is to of course just focus on learning instead of just playing the game for like long hours. I think that's one of the main thing that esports players are or like players that are looking to get into esports are lacking. So that's one thing that we as a players should do more often to make sure that the future that we have envisioned for the Indian esports scene is achieved.
Sure. Sagar, your thoughts?
Very well put it. Okay, so I mean, we have this discussion, I think, twice, thrice a week. It's a topic that all of us, in fact, even the community, I'm sure for a fact, discusses very fairly regularly. So for me personally, when I think about esports, I think of it like any other sport that exists out there today. So the main point where things can start coming together and then we can move ahead in a structured way is getting the community together, build an ecosystem which obviously will be led by athletes like this. But what we need to build around it is a sustainable infrastructure. uh, Cricket is the best example, being in the country that we are in. I could quote. I mean, yes, those 11 players are the most important thing, but they have a great coach behind them. They have physios working with them. They have specified analysts working with them. They have fielding coaches, batting coaches, bowling coaches. All of that is dissected to a point where they are covering every aspect. Today, when I see, even Tirth would agree when I say this, he's a self-trained gamer. He took up on a game and started playing it, realized that he's good at it. Uh, so these realizations have to happen at an early stage. We need to build a support system around these athletes that sort of allows them to just focus on the game, and it's the support team that tells them where they're going wrong or where they're going right, what they can work on. When it becomes a team sport, this is even more critical when you talk about a team esport, when there's a squad involved, having an analyst, having a coach to direct them. So basically, I think at this point, and like Pete said, we're a very nascent industry, but we have everything that is needed to sort of make it that big and meet the projections that that the country and the world is looking us for. But again, building that ecosystem around the athletes is, I think, the most critical step that we need to take and work towards to sort of put ourselves out there on the global front as well.
Very, very interesting thoughts. So I hope our audiences will be able to, take these valuable inputs and figure out, how best they can, harp upon those things. Interesting.
Mhm.
So while we are talking about mobile esports titles, I think it's also imperative to talk about what is the future of, let's say, the future of titles on PC and consoles.
Yeah, I think like mobile, of course, popular, but when we look at PC and console, the community is still there, right? Like we see that PC titles like even Dota and CS:GO like are considered the OG titles, like the original old titles that are still very much active. Like the esports scene around them is still very active. And apart from that, when we look at the recent games, like as Sagar mentioned, like Valorant and Apex Legends, those two titles are shooter games that are on PC, and they've been like doing extremely well when it comes to the esports scene in India and internationally. So like from the PC side, of course, like it is still ongoing. Of course, it didn't receive as much growth as compared to the mobile esports, but now I think as we move ahead and the PC systems become more affordable, I think that is bound to change down the line as well. And when it comes to consoles as well, I think the same thing is true as well. The availability of console in general, I have noticed, is like still limited, but the esports scene around them, around the titles present in this console titles essentially are still very much active, and the community is still active around them as well. So yeah, I think the future for PC and console is looking bright, but again, it just comes down to that low entry point of mobile. That is the main issue that is the PC and console industry needs to somehow fix.
Mm-hmm.
Rightly put, Tiff. I mean, what sort of is an hindrance when it comes to, if I compare it to purely mobile and we talk specifically India, is the affordability, for the lack of a better word. I mean, it's mobile, and I mean, even publishers have been kind enough to release versions that can be even sort of played on lower end mobile phones, because gaming has become that critical even for mobile developers now. But like Teeth said, the PC and led by PC and then console gamers community is very, very loyal. That's the most interesting aspect. They're very loyal. They stick to their titles. These are teams that we don't see disbanding soon. They play for years on together. Uh, but I think we will somewhere have to accept the fact that mobile will always lead the dialogue when it comes to India, just because of the sheer number of gamers that the community has mustered up, from a rookie underdog to a pro or an aspiring pro level. But that being said, there are trends that we've started noticing, which is sort of becoming an enabler in the PC and console scene. Now there are rentable options. People who are genuinely interested in PC or console esports, there are services out there who rent out these machines, which people cannot afford to buy, but they can definitely afford to rent. I personally know gamers who would rent one machine, between four or five of them for a month, just to train on that machine. So getting a high-end machine together is something that they can definitely do, rent it out for a month, play, practice, learn. But again, at the end of the day, it'll be our onus as organizations and businesses to sort of meet their needs. Because if we have the talent, they'll have to be met with the support that these guys can step up on and take that growth leap. But yeah, I think the trend is, although slower, although on a lower end, but it's coming up. And with titles like, again, Valorant and Apex Legends, the CS and the Dota community is also seeing other communities crop up. So I think it's headed on the right path. Maybe in time we'll come up with a solution for it.
Sure. I think just to add on, so as a federation, one particular challenge which we see is that when we talk about India, of course, there's no doubt that India, thankfully or whichever way, has always been a mobile first set of a country, right? But when we look at esports, so like, in India, of course, BGMI, Free Fire, and things like that are leading the show. And I'm sure we got, enough talent which can compete at the international levels. But internationally, when we look at esports, it's largely the PC titles or let's say a console title, right? Take for example,
I mean, the mobile world is alien to them. If we are being very honest.
Absolutely. So, so the problem here is that, the World Championship, which is happening as of today while we are talking, right, again does not have a mobile title, right? So it's a PC title, which is like CSGO, Dota. Then on the console, we have Pro Evolution Soccer, and then we have Tekken, right? So similarly, when you look at Asian Games, so it is, of course, two mobile titles, which unfortunately are banned in India. So now we are talking about a different version, but rest, six titles are again the PC or the console titles.
Absolutely.
Now, so that this is now within India, we can, let's say, obviously, so, so now from a mobile side of it, obviously India within, India, we can keep on growing about, and keep talking about and bragging about the mobile esports athletes or mobile titles. But internationally somewhere, and that is where typically, when let's say, a publisher or an event organizer or a sponsor, right? So everybody is kind of focused, more largely towards, let's say, mobile set of titles. And obviously nothing against, see, for us, esports is, device agnostic, whether that's PC, console, AR, VR, and, let's say down the line there is some new thing which comes up. But, so it creates, so there is a lot of imbalance which exists. So any pointers to how do we address this particular gap and what is that we should do? Of course, as a federation, we would definitely, request the brands and the people and the organizers to maintain a balance because it's always good to be king within our own country or our geography, but लोग तो तभी मानेंगे ना जब दुनिया में जाके झंडा गाड़ेंगे
दुनिया
वहां।
जो कर रहे, that's
पर
very
वहां
true.
तो लड़ाई एक अलग गेम पर हो रही है। I'm so sorry, you're talking in Hindi, but that's how the proverb goes, right? So we
True.
really, हम अपने घर के शेर हो सकते हैं, पर हम शेर तो तब लोग मानेंगे ना जब हम बाहर जाके अपनी क्या बोलते हैं बहादुरी या शेरियत का हम अपना झंडा
दिखाएंगे,
गाड़ कर आए। So
correct.
how do you foresee that this imbalance which exists? And trust me, I'm telling you, uh, there should be a lot of things. There is a lot of initiative which we should take to ensure that this imbalance, the gap gets reduced. और ये imbalance होना ही नहीं चाहिए practically, if
True.
I may say so. But Sagar, why don't you lead? Your thoughts, and then subsequently Teerth can contribute.
I mean, very rightly put, Lokesh. But what I'll talk about here is one aspect that I strongly feel we should consider when we discuss this narrative is playing to our strengths. Now, what we see is obviously we're strengthening ourselves on the mobile front. I think today there are enough and more rosters out there that can definitely compete globally when it comes to mobile games. But now, what we see interestingly is even publishers realizing the strength of mobile and the fact that it's becoming and it's growing at an alarming rate is the proof of the pudding is in the fact that Valorant and Apex are both being developed as mobile versions now. So I think if we there's a one aspect of it is yes, how can we compete with the world in a more traditional sort of platform, which is PC, and the other aspect of it, which I want to highlight right now, is playing to our strengths and working and being that sort of juggernaut approach in the area that we're already good at. So I think there's no harm in us focusing on mobile at all because in time we all know that mobile esports is going to become one of the pillars. I know it's widely not accepted yet, but it's a matter of when, not if. So if we focus on the mobile aspect, which we know already works and is in our favor, I think when the time comes, we can definitely be one of the biggest threats when it comes to mobile esports. So that's how I look at the global scenario. If we're good at, I mean, keep doing the thing that you're good at, right? Why reinvent the wheel? And while we can start focusing and obviously take initiatives on that end, but I think the focus should be mobile because like I said, it's going to go mainstream sooner than we all know, and I think we can be sitting pretty when that day comes, and have at least and make an attempt to dominate that aspect of gaming and esports.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what Sagar said. And to add on to their point, essentially, recently League of Legends also introduced a mobile version of the game, essentially in the form of Wild Rift, which I believe is not released yet, but that is also a mobile MOBA, which is bound to take the esports scene in India, hopefully by a quite well margin. So yeah, I mean most PC titles are adapting towards that mobile style, but when we look at like for example any shooter games, I would say, or maybe like let's say Dota for example, right? And so that is, let's say it's part of the any competitive, and for example it's part of the Asian games, right? So how do we, like, I mean we have players who are playing, we have players who are competing, but it's just that I mean I think where it lacks is the fact that there is not enough support, at least from what I see from organizers. Now, of course, I mean, it is understandable as well because there's, for example, less viewership compared to mobile titles, less eyeballs attracting towards this event, less accessibility of sponsors, maybe. Whatever the reason may be, the organizers are somewhere lacking in the form to bring more tournaments towards us players. And by doing so, like players are like competing within like their own circle, essentially. They are practicing with their friends and everyone, but it's like tough for them to improve their level of gameplay by just playing with similar players that they have been playing for a long time, right? So I think to like improve, we have to look into towards making an ecosystem where players are able to play against better players than themselves, And like one of the ways to do that is by like organizing different screens in within the Indian scene or even like international scene if the game is turn based and doesn't rely on latency or ping issues. So that's one way to like get players towards on par with the international players that we have seen. So I think that's like one place where something can be done from the organizers side, and the other is from the player side. Of course, like when I look at the PC scene, right, at least it's like international organizations are a lot more focused and take it seriously compared to the Indian organizations that I have seen. I mean, that I guess is changing now with new organizations coming into the scene. But like from what I have seen in previous years, like 3, 4, 5 years ago, this was the scene that I had noticed that there was like lack of professionalism within the organization, and there was like lack of contractual obligations between the players and the uh, organizations, which led to that disbanding earlier. So all those things do factor into that as well, I think. And like from players side, I think in the end it just comes down to playing well. There are different teams who have represented India in other international events on PC titles as well, and some of them have done well, of course, some of them have not, and that's like part of the game. But of course, like imagine if those players did well, then maybe that would open up the scene for the rest of the community around that game as well. So yeah, I think in the end, as a player, we should that is like one thing we can do to just constantly try to improve ourselves.
Sure, very valid points, Steve and Saga. I think we are nearing the time now. There are three more questions, but maybe we can close on a very simple question. It's simple for us, but may not be simple for others. A lot of people still think that esports is not a sports. What would be your thoughts onto that? That is esports a real sport?
Sid, I'm sure. I mean, you have to take this.
Yeah, I mean, so this is like the most common question to ask, whenever there's anyone approaching me, this is like the question to ask. So for me, I mean, of course, I would say it's different from sports. Like I wouldn't compare it to sports, but to say that it is less than sports is definitely the wrong way to go about it. And like the main reason behind that is, of course, like when we were at Asian Games, right? Lokesh sir would remember we met with Hima Das, who is a very reputed athlete, and even they mentioned that the dedication and skill that is required for esports is the same as traditional sports. So yeah, that coming out from there, even though they maybe not know much about esports, they still realize that any athlete that manages to represent India at such a prestigious event would have dedicated time and their skills towards that craftsmanship, essentially. And I think, yeah, that's essentially what it comes down to. Esports is different from sports, but it still requires the same skills essentially required to perform well in sports. Like when I talk about it, it might be more mental side, like it might require more mental skills than physical skills. But even like some sports, for example, like StarCraft or any other real-time strategy games, we have seen players pressing upwards of like 500 or 400 keys per minute, and that is like an exceptionally physical activity that not everyone can achieve. So, like some sports, some esports do require physical skills as well. So, yeah, I mean, it might require a different subset of skills, but in the end, it does require a set amount of skills and time and dedication. So I would say it's different from sports, but to say that esports is any less than sports is not ideal. I would certainly put it on equal terms with sports as well.
Well put. The skills bit was the key takeaway from what you said. So for me, when I'm posed with this question, I look at esports as an hybrid, where you need to think like an indoor chess player. You need to be smart because it's more mental than physical, but it does bring in all the other aspects of any other mainstream traditional sport. You play in a team sometimes when if it's a team thing. Uh, you need to function well together. Are you competing? Yes. Are you winning and losing? Yes. Are you representing a team, an organization, or a country? Yes. I mean, I don't think any other traditional sport out there is doing anything differently. So it's definitely is a sport. Just the arena is different. These are held in virtual worlds, while not a physical world. But No, it's definitely a sport. I mean, it's not even an argument. I don't even get down that path and that discussion. But for people who may be sort of on the fence with it or aren't really convinced, yeah, matlab, if you played cricket, you played football, you played any other sport out there, give esports a chance. Try being competitive in it, and then only once you do it, you'll know it. So I think give it a shot, and then we could probably revisit this conversation with that side.
Sure, very well said. And just to add on, that I think as of today, now still, I hope that your answers clarify, people that esports is actually a sport. But I think when we look at our esports, what we need is fast response time, quick decision making abilities, and so for anybody to be able to do that, he first needs to be physically fit, right? The perception, as I said, that normally when you Google, let's
Absolutely.
say, a gamer picture, they'll try to show some kind of picture of a fat boy or a girl, sitting on a beanbag, eating pizzas and drinking
Yeah.
all those, aerated drinks. That is a picture. But of course, we've got Tirth who's sitting in front of us, right? He's nowhere close to, all those perceptions of this thing. But having said so, we've got people like, let's say, Moin, or for that matter, Karan Magnani, all those players. And then obviously, how to forget Ankit Pant, right? Who's been parallelly doing modeling also, right? And so, all these guys are physically fit. So you need to be physically fit. Only a physical fit body can lead to a healthy mind. It's never a
Absolutely.
vice versa. Your healthy mind cannot lead to a healthy body, right? So that's very important. And I think when the pinnacle, see, when we talk about sports, we talk about IOC, which is the pinnacle body for sports. So when the pinnacle body of sports has agreed and has included esports as a sport. So I think this discussion largely should rest on peace. But I just this question was largely from a Indian perspective.
Right.
So yes, so if let's say a shooting can be a sport, if let's say a bow and arrow, or archery for that matter can be a sport, if horse riding can be a sport, then obviously our esports is far ahead from all those set of categories. And I think the way our civilization is getting evolved, our sports also needs to get evolved. And so esports is just an evolution of esports, nothing more
True.
than that. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and also to like, which reminds me that there is another sport called bridge in Olympics as well. That is
yes,
essentially, that is like similar, very similar to card game essentially.
yeah,
I mean, it is a card game, but like when you compare that with esports, I think like it's obvious that it's not just bound to the physical capabilities or requirements. It's all about like the skills required for it.
true.
True.
Great. So thank you, guys. There are a lot of questions, but I think one very pertinent question, and obviously looking at the limited time which we have already crossed the time. But I think there's one question in which obviously I request any of you guys or both of you guys if you want. The question is, sir, there are a lot of players who want to go into esports, but they don't get support from society, their parents, and have to give up their dreams. What can be done for them? I think that's a very relevant question. So that's the reason I just picked up that. But rest of the questions, guys, feel free to ask either of us through our social media handles or otherwise. Yeah. Sagar, you want to start, and then I'll leave it on to Tir to address that, because I think, yeah,
Yeah, true. I mean, these can definitely take part, the first part of that question. I mean, just sharing his story of how he managed to get his journey, involving his families, getting their go ahead. But when it comes to being support, it's changing. It's changing now. There are so many platforms, digital platforms out there, be it tournament platforms, be it a platform like LAN that is just bringing the community together, be it streaming platforms. These guys are together, sort of enabling a basic gamer today and giving them avenues that can lead to something or the other. Uh, Finding a career in esports does not really mean to you to be a competitive athlete. Any skill. I'm a designer. I can find my, and esports is something that I'm passionate about. I can definitely find a fit in that industry. if I'm an analyst, if I speak well, if I can become a caster, if I write well, I can definitely become an esports journalist. So we need to sort of broaden our horizons, broaden our mindset and the way we look at the industry, because it's not just about being a gamer or a content creator. If we need to grow, like I said, I began this panel with that. We need to build that infrastructure. And all these elements, designers, casters, analysts, coaches, anyone and everything, you see a traditional fit for someone, that skill set traditionally fitting into any of these mainline businesses of sort or mainline industries, they can definitely find the fit in esports. So it's just about believing in your skills, following your passion, and finding the right fit, which in the next coming years will definitely be more accessible and become that bit real. So I think that's the way I look at it. Don't just think that you need to be a gamer to be a part of the esports industry. Find your skill, and you'll find the fit. We'll find the fit for you if that has to be.
I definitely agree with what Saga said. Like the field itself, the esports ecosystem is now so huge. But like when I talk about like a player's perspective, fortunately for me, like I have a very supportive family and community, so I cannot like relate to the issues faced by other players. But I'll say a couple of things that led to that essentially. One thing is like limiting yourself maybe to pursue this field for specific time, like giving yourself a fixed amount of time and looking at what you can achieve within that, setting realistic expectation from it, and judging your journey based of that is the most simplest way to go, I would say. Like even when I started, I fixed like 2 hours, for example, to play games or compete in them, and apart from that I wouldn't focus more on them. So only by doing that, I was able to get support from my community and family, because like I mean, yes, you can maybe take a dropout year from, let's say, school and pursue esports, but then again it is still that you have to fix a fixed time slot. Maybe let's say you give yourself 2 years to achieve what you want in esports, and then after that, like if it doesn't work out, then you have to expect that and move back to your regular schedule of life. So that's one thing. And the other thing, when it comes about like convincing parents to allow you to pursue for playing into esports titles, I think like the major thing that is happening right now is the fact that it is now being recognized by the international committees, like for example IOC with the Olympic Committee. The fact that they are recognizing it as a proper esports event, or like a proper medal event, is a should be a huge green flag to help you convince your parents. Like you can bring that argument, and hopefully if they're understanding, then they'll be able to see that there is a huge scope in esports, and it's not just playing games on your time as a time pass or anything, and the fact that it is a viable career choice now. So that is one thing. And like the other thing is that I mean, currently it is still, I assume, ongoing, but when the Indian government like they are taking steps to improve the esports ecosystem, and once that is like properly established, I'm pretty sure that the acceptancy of Indian parents, would be quite easy to achieve after like the esports is essentially recognized by the Indian government as well. So I'm sure that like federations like ESFI are like working towards that as well. So I'm confident that this will get solved. But in the end, like it does come down to the player, just like set limited expectations and work towards achieving the best you can in that time slot, and everything should hopefully be fine.
All right, great. Deep, I hope this question, I think, was pretty well answered. Thank you, Deep. Thank you, Sagar. It was indeed a pleasure hosting you guys, and I really enjoyed, moderating the session. I hope I
No,
didn't
at all. I mean,
go wrong
we could go on for another couple
here
of
and
hours.
there. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. No, it's great, and thank you again. Thank you, Deep. Thank you, Sagar, and keep gaming, I should say. All
Thank
the
you.
best.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much for having us.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks,
Thank
Bye.
and
you.
take
Bye
care.
bye.